Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
Artlist.io.
People, it's time to move out. Show 'em what we do now. They say that work seems so hard to follow. I am not a role model, only a teacher. Teach 'em when the school's out. Preacher man preaching to each his own. Mano we mano. Fly away, fly away. Fly away with me.
Hello again to the only show. That happens every single week. I need to do something about that. But hello again to the only show in South Africa completely dedicated to the practice, the journey, and the life of social entrepreneurs. SEs, or social entrepreneurs, use entrepreneurship to create social value, and whatever surpluses they generate in their enterprise gets plowed back into creating more value. I'm your host, Tracy Lee Miller, and last week we had the accomplished artist and art activist, Chapapi Mahato, in studio. He spoke to us about the value of art in society. He encouraged us to think of art as simply the artist's way to make a contribution to society. I asked him to share some of his thoughts with us. I asked him to share some of his rookie mistakes, and I'm going to share some of them with you in case you missed the show. I asked him how he managed to get funding for his proposals in the early days, and he said he was sent back and forth because he hadn't actually made an allowance for team salaries, and he wanted us to remember that art does not equal poverty, and that's a mindset that we need to get away from. Thank you, Chapapi, for bringing your dynamic self into the studio, and we wish you all the best. At the end of last week's episode, I briefly mentioned to you a very exciting global competition that's happening at the moment. In fact, the deadline is a month from now, on the 4th of November. D Prize challenges bold new leaders to tackle extreme poverty and will award winning teams with up to 20,000 USD each to launch organizations that can distribute proven poverty interventions to thousands, maybe even millions of people. Learn more about the D Prize at www.d-prize.org. But today on the show, I have the incredible privilege of having Tumiso Masha in the studio. Hi, Tumiso.
Hey, Tracy. How you doing?
Oh, what a lovely voice for radio. Oh, my gosh. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm awesome.
So
thanks.
do you prefer Tracy Lee, Tracy, or Trace?
It depends. Some call me Tracer, T, Miller. I'm also known as Miller. Yeah, I like Tracy Lee.
Okay. Tracy Lee's pretty cool.
Tracy
I
Lee
like
can
double entendre names.
Yeah. Very fancy word. Can we say that again?
Double entendre.
Yes, see, daar kom die regte ding nou uit. So, Tumiso, you're an actor, you're a voiceover artist, you're a radio DJ, you're an MC, a television host, you're a writer. I didn't know you're a writer.
I'm a bit of a writer.
What did you write?
I started out writing television scripts. Initially, after drama school, when I wrote plays, I was on the team for Isidingo. I was one of the intern writers that they were bringing on, and basically all we did was contribute to the story for a bit, and then they'd let us write a bit of the scripts. Usually they wouldn't use them, but at least we got good practice at it. And then from there, I started writing blogs, I guess, and articles for a magazine called Black, where I used to write about cars, which are my passion. And generally, I write for I'm African. So most of the stuff when I'm African, not all of it, just most of it is the stuff that I write. And occasionally I write a blog or two.
So I'm African. I went to the launch last week, Thursday.
Yes.
Great stuff.
Thank you.
I think you're also profiling the work of what was her name?
Lebohang Mutaung.
And the most interesting thing about her work is that she uses
real hair.
No.
Well, she doesn't use real hair, but she uses hair. So she stopped using real hair, and I must qualify that.
I was going to ask you about that. Like, does she use real hair?
Well, she started out using real hair, and she found that I think people were a little bit nervous about having someone else's hair in their home.
Okay. Why do you think that is? Why do you think people would get nervous about using someone else's hair?
I think Africans, in general, we attach a lot of spiritual and energetic power to hair. So I think from that point of view, people might be a little bit nervous. But I didn't understand that even Westerners would feel that way. But I think from them, it's from more hygiene point of view. Even though she always prepared the hair, washed it, and sterilized it, if you will. So she thought, you know what? Let me just start using the synthetic hair, which I suppose is more energy neutral in that way.
Wow, interesting. I find that interesting. Her work itself is very...
she's so talented.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's really a comment on society, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And what I love about her, she's a young lady, right? And she started out as a hairdresser, actually. Wow. And she's using that talent in a very artistic way. And she's really had to fight hard to be an artist. You know, her family wasn't always keen on her being an artist. I can totally understand that struggle. I think our families on this continent think of what we do, you included, I suppose, as well, as when are you going to get a real job?
You're not really working. Yes.
Yeah. Whereas... everywhere else, and I suppose in the more Western world, art is a real thing. It's like, it's something to be proud of. My daughter is an artist. She's a painter. Oh, wow. Whereas here's like, she's a painter. Like, she paints houses? No, she actually paints pieces of art.
They'll probably be happier if she was a painter that painted houses.
Yeah, because that's real, right?
Yeah.
That's like, you go out, you work, and then you come back with money. Whereas with art, you have to wait a bit until someone buys your work.
So here's an interesting question for you, because you say that Africa is a soulful continent. Everybody agrees with you, and that art is the window to the soul. So if we are not investing in art education at our schools, what are we saying about our soul?
Well, I think we're really not taking care of ourselves that much. I grew up in the 80s, right? So I started...
No way.
You couldn't tell?
Never. Never.
Yeah, you're very kind. So, we had art. Even in what was then, I mean, my first school was going to school in the township. We still drew and we had art. That's where my love of art started. And I don't know if children are still doing that generally at any schools. And it's so important for the development of children, for just your development as a human being, to just doodle, to play around with expressing yourself artistically. And I think if we don't take care of how we express our souls, that's why I think people are expressing themselves very negatively at the moment. We've got all this violence happening in our country. We've got people protesting a lot, whether you believe rightfully or not. Yeah, there has to be some form of protest. But I remember there was a time when we had protest theatre, we had protest art. And I don't know if we have that much of that at the moment.
No, not much expression of our anger and our feeling as society.
There's no positive expression of that, right? Even in our music, I think we could be maybe expressing our anger through music, through television and film, through plays on stage, through fine art, painting, sculptures, and that sort of thing.
So why now? Why am African now?
Well, I think now is the right time to do that. Now is we've got an opportunity to do something that's on a digital plane, and anyone from around the world can access our art. They can access our soul in a way that they don't have to come here on a plane, or if people still travel by ship or any other way, from wherever they might be, and really see us for who we are.
And Am African is a platform for you to showcase African luxury. And it's not just art, is it though?
It's not just art. I mean, our vision is to place African treasure on the gallery of humanity.
Oh my goodness.
And I know it sounds
very
highfalutin, right?
Very cheesy. Cheesy.
Is it cheesy?
Ding, ding,
oh,
ding,
come
ding,
on.
Ding, ding.
Okay.
We got a cheese.
You know what?
Ball.
I like cheese.
I love cheese.
And I love cheesy movies. I love cheesy music.
I love cheese. But say that sentence again, because it really does sound beautiful.
We're placing African treasure on the gallery of humanity.
I love it.
And basically what we're saying is, guys, we've got all these treasures here in Africa, and a lot of the times our treasures go out there and then they're taken by the West, who, funny enough, has a greater appreciation of our stuff, and then it's commodified and kind of sold back to us, where we're seeing a lot of African treasures now out of our own reach, even our own art. Try buying a Gerard Sikoto right now and Irma Stern. You can't afford it. Well, I can't.
That's why I buy Chipapi. I buy him now.
Right, buy him now.
Buy him now.
Because in a couple of years, that's a gift for your children. That's a gift for yourself.
Last week at the launch, you said, and I don't want to make it sound like the launch was amazing, because it was.
Oh, thank you.
It was so much fun. But last week at the launch, you said, you know, you go into any new billionaire's home and you'll see cars and you'll see houses and properties and holidays abroad, but you have prints on the walls.
Yeah, at best,
At
if
best,
they have.
like a Mr. Price prints
right?
on the wall.
And the funny thing is, right, for me, as African people, when you start making money, the first thing you want to do is buy the biggest TV that you can possibly find. And doesn't matter the price. I mean, their TVs now selling for hundreds of thousands of rands. And we're like, that makes sense, you know. 5 years down the line, that TV is probably worth like 5,000 rands if you look at how TVs are. And if anyone breaks into your house, the first thing they'll probably steal is a TV anyway. And yet, to convince most of the people that for a fraction of that price of that big flat screen TV, you could buy a beautiful piece of art that your children will appreciate, that you will appreciate, that will give an appreciation to your home. You know, if you try to sell your home at a later stage and you've got beautiful art in it, it actually appreciates the value of your home. To try and convince people of that is something that I feel is my calling now.
So this is African's purpose.
This is African's purpose, to do that. And to say, you know, when we started it with Lerato, my brother.
Big up Lerato.
Big up Lerato. He's an engineer. So he came in with all the technical stuff. He was doing his MBA and he kind of did this as an MBA thesis. He did African. And all we wanted to do was to go back to some of Biko's ideologies, because we really love Steve Biko, and we were on this whole thing. We want to make a Steve Biko movie, you know, for now.
It's needed.
And then we were like, but where are we going to put it? And that's how African came along, that we need to have a place where we can showcase all these artistic ventures that are happening in Africa. And we also really wanted to have a reawakening of our African souls, to say, you know what, being from Africa doesn't make you less in any way. In fact, if you really understand who you are and where you're coming from, you should really feel like you're something special.
So you're talking about the inferiority complex.
We're talking about the inferiority
tackling
complex.
that inferiority
Yeah,
complex.
and also just tackling things like social cohesion. I also believe that at the moment our country has never been so split. I mean, I think everyone has gone back to their particular demographics and they're sticking in their corners. I have many theories about that, but I believe that one of my theories is we're just not seeing each other in the space where we're together and fighting the good fight like we used to. We feel like we all have to fight it in our own corners, and it's so important because we are really the Rainbow Nation. You know, you go anywhere around the world, and our diversity is our wealth.
I've heard our situation being referred to as an experiment. In circles and conversations abroad. Yeah. Because no one really thought we would be here.
Yeah.
You know?
We should have all killed each other.
We should have been
20
here
years
20 years ago.
Yeah.
But we're getting there.
Yeah.
And I feel like we are on the brink. I agree with you.
I think we're on the brink. We were getting there, and then things got a bit tough. You know, there's nothing like not having enough that will make people want to hold on to the little that they have. But I think that's what we've got to fight. And that's what we're trying to do with African, where we believe we're here to serve. And we're here to serve all those people who do amazing work with their hands, whether it be painting fine pictures or fine art, sculpting beautiful work, making beautiful jewelry, making beautiful dresses, making beautiful sofas or furniture, homeware, and saying, guys, you don't have to struggle with getting it out to the rest of the world. We've got African, and we can get it out there for you.
So it's access to market.
That's the biggest thing, right? Access to market, the distribution.
The distribution channel.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Social Enterprise Show, and you've heard the voice of Tumiso Masha. And he is talking to us about African. You can check them out on Facebook, capital AM, African, and African with a K for that consciousness to come in there. And also do you have a website?
We do. It's amafrican.com.
amafrican.com. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, I want to know, if I want to buy my first piece of art and I'm hoping that it'll be worth something in a couple of years from now, what are the first things I need to look out for?
Okay.
Harnessing the power of talk radio. Brandlive.co.za
official Major World Online Stew Invasion.
Bars on bars.
What about me right now? It's about our guest. Bafethi skipani. Amathi ngathalele bafethi. Yo, amaflenyana studio bafethi skipani. Oh, freestyle. Shenge freestyle. Fana kuma no baba Andy.
Hey baba Andy. Hashtag.
Ahlanganisela amathi beat dog. Nokucela.
Young niggas ambition, waking up is working for money. Changing their past, feeding their fams, balang lali. We keep it running like SPV, exchanging money.
Nice. Hey. Nice. Call them unexpected experts. White sweatshirt.
Hey.
Looking down on these niggas, my damn neck hurts. You can go ahead, homie, give me your best work. I bet you take your phone out and mumble up your first words.
Live from 27 boxes in the heart of Melville. This is brandlive.co.za.
Have you ever thought about the power of social media? Social media has the power to make your business grow. Grow! Yeah. Why don't you let us manage your social media? Because our business is to see your business grow. Visit us at www.bstownmedia.co.za.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za.
And you're back with Tracy Lee Miller. You can call me Tracy Lee for now, Tumiso. Thank you very much.
What up, Trace?
I just want to keep saying Tumiso Masha. He's in the studio. That is so exciting for me. We're here talking about African, AMFAFRIKAN.com.
That's correct.
Which is open for business. And
Yes.
essentially you're saying that South Africa, the continent, we are open for business, trying to solve that distribution problem, trying to get access to market for luxury goods. So, question, you mentioned last week and you mentioned before that you want to change the perception around luxury, African luxury. You also called it African treasure not so long ago, just a couple of minutes ago. What perception do you want to change?
Well, I have a feeling that people come to Africa and they have a wonderful time at a safari or whatever. And maybe they come to an urban environment and they pick up curios. Oh, look at this. I just picked this up. It was made by this wonderful man under a tree or something.
His name's Tondo.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And we end up even as us here in South Africa or in Africa, we bargain the person to death. In other words, we're not paying the price that this thing is worth. And as a result, I think our people are not developing. Their work is also not developing. But what we want to do is also change the perception of that, because there are people who are doing amazing work that should never be classified as just mere curios or crafts. It's actual real art.
Okay. Before you go on, what is real art? Isn't it subjective? How do you know what's a good piece to buy for your home, for your office? It's all good and well we're telling our African people that we're not supporting the arts, but we don't even know where to begin. Is it the price tag that tells me it's a good piece, or
not necessarily? I mean, I think that's a great question to ask, because art is both subjective and objective. For example, there are certain pieces that I've seen that sell for millions of dollars. Jackson Pollock is always one that stands out. When I did art in school and I'd see a Jackson Pollock work, I'd be like, this is crazy. How can this be art?
What is it?
And it's expressionism. That's what it is, right? So it's just someone who's just gone and had an explosion of paint on a canvas. And his work is some of the most expensive art in the world. It goes for tens of millions of dollars.
Look at Banksy.
But Banksy, Banksy's cool.
Banksy's a collective.
Banksy's now a collector's piece, right? But how do you collect a Banksy piece? Do you cut out a piece of a wall?
They literally do that. Okay, so so there's rumor Banksy can't actually come out and say I did this because it's illegal. It's illegal to do graffiti. So
how do you know you've got a Banksy?
How do you know that you've got a Banksy? Because it's a Banksy. It appears overnight.
Yeah.
That's one of the trademarks. It appears overnight. And it's somewhere very public. and it's something that has such a strong message.
Yes,
that
it's got a great social message. Every one of his pieces.
You see it, you never forget it, and people are literally fighting about breaking down that wall or cutting out that wall, putting it into a gallery.
Yeah.
But whatever money they get for that Banksy, who do they give it to?
Who do they give it to? And who is Banksy? Because I think part of his mystique is the fact that we don't know who this Banksy guy is, or lady. It could be a lady, right?
It could be a collective. We don't know. But the point is, this is graffiti, and this is stuff that we drive past all the time in South Africa. And I know there's some beautiful graffiti artists in Cape Town. Yeah. My kids love it. I once posted on Facebook and I said, "Oh my gosh, this is a beautiful piece of graffiti," and someone said, "Be careful. That is the start of the decline. If you teach your kids to appreciate graffiti, what's next? Smoking weed?"
That's interesting, because I think with graffiti, and I want to get back to the question you asked about how do I know it's a good investment or it's good art. Initially, places that had graffiti were always seen as the decaying parts of the city, but now there are actual places in the major metropolitans like London, like New York, and so on and so forth, that encourage a certain type of graffiti. Cape Town is doing that as well, very well, and so is the city of Joburg, and it actually raises the value of the property in the area if it's very well done graffiti, because you've got people who are graffiti artists. They're basically graphic artists. But to get back to the question that you asked, how do I know something is worthwhile and is a good piece of art? Well, number one, I think you do have to be a little bit subjective. It has to appeal to you, because you have to live with it at the end of the day. So whether I say to you, Tracy Lee, this piece of art is now worth 350,000 or 350 million rand, it doesn't really matter, even if it's worth 35,000 rands. Do you, first of all, is it something that appeals to you? And I think art is very honest. We have all seen those prints that are not really that amazing, but you probably buy it because it's your first flat and you're still a student and you just need something nice to hang up.
Don't do it, man.
Don't do it, man. But you can find that if you go to places like here, 27 Boxes, which to my failing is one of the first times I've actually been here, and it's an amazing space. Really but places like Mamoneng, there are many other places like that as well, and even places where people are learning how to do art, like universities. There are artists there who've got amazing work. Buy work that is technically very good. If someone is painted with oils or acrylic or watercolors or whatever, you can tell if this is good or not. But from then on, when you start getting into the art game, start following it. Art is like music, you follow music, you talk to people about music. So the same with art. Go to places where the best, most happening art is happening. One of the great places that is great for art at the moment is August House. It houses some of the best artists in South Africa. It's downtown Johannesburg. It's like this dingy corner. You come around the corner and this building you've driven past in a hurry to get out of there. But if you go inside, they've got the most brilliant artists, and I know that people like Nelson Magamo, who's a fantastic artist, along with Black Coffee, are doing a project where they're creating another building like that, where artists can live there and have their studios and create art. Go to places like that, get to know some of the artists, start buying the stuff, and get it from the ground floor. Get it while it's still reasonably cheap. Because I look at someone like Nelson Magamo, who's become one of the foremost artists of his generation right now. He's got people like Swiss Beats, Alicia Keys, buying his stuff. Just to mention a few. And he was saying to me 5-6 years ago, the same piece that you'll now buy for 350,000 to 500,000, he was selling for 35,000. And the people who had bought those pieces for 35,000, thinking they were doing him a favor, now have pieces that are worth 10 times what they bought them for. That is a much better return than you'd probably get at the stock exchange. I'm not saying that all art obviously appreciates in that way, but the value of art is just in the having it in your space. In my home, I've always had some sort of art. I was lucky enough growing up to know some artists. A good friend of the family was a great artist. So we also had some great art that didn't cost an arm and a leg, but it just changes a child's mindset and perception of the world when you have great art in the house.
So you're saying, first and foremost, make sure that the work appeals to you. It's something that you can look at every day. I think the second thing I'd like to maybe add to that is it must elicit some emotion in you.
Yeah, that's right. Art is an emotional thing.
it must stir something in you.
Mhm.
It must be something that you can converse with another person on. It must
Yeah.
be something that it's not just going to be what's that elevator music.
Exactly, right?
Like I can live without this in my life.
Yeah.
And then maybe the third one is get interested in the subject.
Get interested. You know, it's not the hardest thing to learn about, and you don't have to be an expert. You just have to have an interest. I mean, when you have an interest in anything, you realize that your knowledge always goes up. People have interest in TV shows, series.
Okay. So surround yourself with art and artists.
Yeah, surround
And-
yourself
and,
with some.
And don't just look at it as a transactional decision, but think of it as an investment.
Yeah.
You bought your first property, why cheapen it with a print?
Although I must say, we're also making some great prints at the moment. I think there's a space for prints. Not to sound snobbish, but I wouldn't recommend
Mr.
that.
Price.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking
Yeah,
here.
like the lady with the umbrella standing
You know
on
what
the
I mean?
beach. There's a million of those. That's what I mean by print.
Yeah,
I don't mean
yeah.
original.
Exactly,
Yeah.
like people who've done work on lithographs and then printed it and all sorts of things like that. There's some amazing prints out there, but I think what we both mean is basically just don't go
Yeah, you
to
know
checkers.
the fruit bowl
Yeah.
in the frame.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
No,
Yeah.
no. It's gonna
Um,
have to be a no.
Yeah, and because that doesn't really say anything to you. I mean, let's be honest. Most of that work that you just said it's a very important thing. I wish I had come up with it, but you were smarter.
I didn't come up with Africa Treasure on the Gallery of Humanity. Like I didn't come. That's gonna haunt me. It's gonna haunt
Well,
me.
if you don't mind, I'm allowing you to use that. If I can use the other thing
You're welcome.
about it's got to talk to you.
Yeah.
And that's so important. I mean, that's a simple way of putting it. Does this piece talk to me?
Does it speak to me? Does it elicit something?
Does
in
it
me?
elicit
Yeah.
any emotions?
Can I look at it when I'm angry? Can I look at it when I'm sad? Does it do something
Yeah.
for me? So for instance, in my house, there's pieces that I have in my bedroom
Mm-hmm.
that I can't comfortably put that in my lounge.
And that's okay.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Because first thing that I do is I see this piece.
Mm.
So I think if you don't know where to start, and if you don't know how to invest in an artist and in an artist down the road from you, possibly even, or if you've got a child that is displaying some artistic talent, let's encourage it, let's nurture it, let's support our own, and let's take our pride and have more pride in our African treasures.
Yeah. Look, let's have more pride in our African treasures because we do have amazing treasures. We don't have to wait for them to be appropriated by someone else and then sold back to us at a higher price. I look at people like Amaxhosa, for example, where they had that whole debacle with
the
the
print.
socks and the print and
Imagine.
all that stuff. And now suddenly it's like, oh, okay, it's cool, I can buy it. Or Louis Vuitton suddenly doing Esther Mahlangu type prints. And then now it's become cool. That's okay. I mean, that happens, and in fact, it's sort of like an ode. It's someone like tipping their cap to us. But now, homage. But now it's time for us to take it and do it for ourselves. You know, don't be the last person to buy someone whose art is coming up. You spoke about Chipapa. His art is amazing.
I love it.
I can't wait to be able to buy one of his pieces. In fact, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to talk
Do
to
it.
him and just
Just
do
do
it.
it.
And artists, you have ways of paying it off. You can pay it off
Absolutely.
over time as well.
I was about to say to you, like, people think that you need to, like, you see the price tag on the piece, but if you engage the artist, you can say to them, hey, can I do this in 2 installments?
Can I do it in even 12 installments? Because at the end of the day, you make the deal with the artist that when I'm finished paying you, I'll get the piece.
It's
And it's an
mine.
honest transaction. And also, it allows our artists to stay here with us. A lot of our artists have to end up going overseas to make money. One of our artists on our site, Nico Poko,
I love Nico.
he's so
Uncle
cool,
Nico.
right? Uncle
Yeah.
Nico. And he does this beautiful art, you know, he's got this style about him and he does his art to music. But for him to live the kind of life that he does, it's not because South Africans bought his art. He had to go and live in New York without his family for years and years and then make enough money to come back and be able to buy a house and take care of his family, which I think is tragic.
It
you
is
know?
awful. And then
Yeah.
the worst part is when art becomes so transactional, which I
Yeah.
feel is what happens when galleries get their hands
Yeah.
on pieces. Like, they wait until you die and then suddenly
You know what I
the
mean?
value shoots up. I mean,
Yeah.
what are you saying,
Yeah.
actually?
Yeah. Why should people have to die poor for the gallery to make money? And that's the other thing that we're trying to do. We're trying to democratize art. I always feel like when I go to a gallery, it's a bit overwhelming. I don't have the guts to go up to the person in the gallery and say, how much is that piece of art, right?
Yeah.
Because they kind of give you that sense of if you have to ask, you can't afford it.
afford it.
And you're like,
yeah.
really? Maybe I can. I just really want to know how much it is. But people feel like they're not good enough to buy art because they have to go to a gallery. With this, you can look at it on your phone, on your laptop at home, on your desktop at work for a while. Get to love the piece, like you said, let it talk to you for a while, and then make a purchase.
Okay, so there we have it. We've had some fantastic tips on how to buy your first piece of art, or how to adorn your home with its first piece. It could even be a sculpture. It doesn't necessarily have to be a painting. It could be a photograph that's been taken by a person with a fantastic eye. It could be a piece of music, and of course, let's encourage ourselves not to pirate music. That's the other thing that's important.
Right?
Guys, I have to go. It's been amazing to meet
Oh, that was too short.
I know.
Thank
it's
you
like
so
30
much,
minutes
Tracy.
done and dusted.
Yeah.
I'll be back again next week with the Social Enterprise Show. We will tackle some more topics and issues around social entrepreneurship, and I'll talk to you some more about the D Prize and some of the challenges that you could possibly help solve. Go to the dprize.org, d-prize.org, and find out more. I'll speak to you again next week. And remember, if you're not billing on the third meeting, it's a date.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This is such an awesome show.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za.